Text message calls I get all the time is from people, and the question I get all the time throughout doing this show is, how do we protect our children? People always ask me whether it's in person, through messenger, phone, email, text. How do we protect our children in the current climate we live in, with all this going on? How do we protect our children when they go out the house and we're concerned that they're going to be the next victim, hunted down the streets for no reason, being suspected of a crime that they didn't even commit, never seeing their day in court to prove they're innocent, immediately assume they're guilty and being murdered? How do we protect our children? How do we protect our children from these heinous crimes? How do we not become the next mother, father, family member grieving the lost one for a child life that was taken too soon? How do we protect them? Let's talk about it, people. After today's show, some of you going to love what I'm saying. Some of you going to be hating what I'm saying. But today I'm going to give you my brutally honest truth on how we protect our children. We must first identify the problem. We look at the Ahmaud Aubrey story. A man who's out jogging, doing something he enjoys every single day, being run down and gunned down the streets. We look at this story and we see it every single day. We see this just all too often. It's become the new norm. A black man or a black woman out just doing something we all do typically every single day, nothing out of the ordinary, and then being murdered. Another family member grieving, or a child's life lost too soon. But what do we do in the defense of someone like Ahmaud Aubrey, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, and all the other people, the long list of other black people whose lives was taken unjustly, who were accused of a crime but never seen their day in court? How do we protect our children from being their next victim? Well, let's talk about it. But before we get to the present time, we gotta go to the past. So let's start in the past. You ever heard of Birth of a Nation? The movie, Birth of a Nation? Nah, probably not. You did. You probably think about the movie, the dude from Beyond the Lights, he created Birth of a Nation, and Nat Turner story. That he went through a lot of work to do. You probably think about that. Nat Turner, who revolted against the slave masters and killed slave masters. So you probably think about the most current story of Birth of a Nation. You probably didn't need to see that one. I don't know. I'm not judging you. But if you're not familiar with the Birth of a Nation, please allow me to enlighten you on the Birth of a Nation, the original movie. The Birth of a Nation movie was originally made, I believe, and don't quote me on this, was in the early 30s or 40s. Earlier time, okay? Different times than today. A little bit different. The movie was based on sex-crazed black males who was running around trying to rape white women. You know, sex-crazed, eyes bulging out their heads, mouth drooling, running around chasing, killing, raping white women. But who was the savior in this movie? Who was the hero? Because in every movie you have to have a villain, you have to have a hero. So we recognize that the villain in these movies was the black man walking around sex-crazed trying to rape innocent white women. The hero in this movie was the Ku Klux Klan. Riding around their horse with their white robes, they would find, hunt down, and kill these sex-crazed black males who were terrorizing these white women. Now put that in your mind for a second. Put that in your mental roller index. Put that in your subconscious for a second, where that's driven into your mind at a young age, or even an older age, where this is being shown in every movie theater, seeing posters all around this. This becomes the new creation in your mindset of truth. And we all know how truth is. Truth is not what's truly seen, but what we choose to believe. So when you see this, it creates something in your subconscious to look at every black male as a sex crazed, demonized man who's out here looking to not only rape and kill white women, but out here ready to create crimes, destroy, and cause all kinds of havoc and crimes. It's taught. Then you have a movie like this passed down through history. That image is shown throughout history. You think about Public Enemy. You ever seen Public Enemy? You know what Public Enemy is? The music group. Don't Believe the Hype. You ever heard that song? My favorite song by Public Enemy is Rebel Without Pause. Dope song. And you think about their logo. Black man caught in the crosshairs of a gun. You think about the movie Don't Believe the Hype. You think about when they talk about Don't Believe the Hype, and you think about this. When we talk about Birth of a Nation, what happens? The Caucasian people who watch this movie, they believe in the hype of this movie. They believe that every black person is walking the streets out with the intent to commit a crime or to rape a white woman, cause murder, havoc in their community, threaten their very way of living. But what do we do as black people? We believe in the hype as well. Because in our subconscious, we have believing that we have become exactly what they created in their minds of us. We have become the very idea of what was created in the Birth of a Nation. Now, that's not to say that all black people are walking around here thinking and seeing themselves as criminals, but we all go out here going out of our way to prove that we're not criminals. We go out of our way to try to fit in and then teach our children that you should believe in that someone else is more entitled to something than you are, that someone else holds the keys to your future, hold the keys to your success. One of the things you constantly hear as growing up is you need a white person's approval to be successful in this world. And if you try to talk too intelligent, you try to speak too intelligent, you try to speak out of character, dress out of character of your community that you're trying to project yourself or to be as such as a white person. So a lot of times what we do is we project the same evil that was projected in a movie on our own children. We believed in the same hype that was taught to them. We then chose to buy into that same hype. Think about this for a second, people. Think about how we raise our kids and how we should view our children, our husbands, our wives. Think about it. How should you treat your husband? You should treat him like a king, right? You should see your husband as a king wearing a crown. You should see your woman as a queen wearing a crown. You should see your young children, your son as a prince, your daughter as a princess. And you should treat him as such. You should talk to him as such. Since we believe in the hype, shouldn't we do that? Shouldn't we recognize where we truly come from? Where our true heritage is? Where our true background is? And we should treat each other as such. We should recognize each other as such. Let's speak more generally. Let's get deeper into that. See, when we talk about treating your husband like a king, we talk about speaking to him like a king, speaking life into him, speaking hope into him, speaking up and talking up his hopes, his dreams, his ambition, making sure he knows in his house that he is the head of the house, that he is the man. And that the whole outside of the world can think so less of him, can think so devaluing of him, cannot believe in his ambition, cannot believe in his hope, his knowledge, his wisdom, his strength. But inside of his house, he knows that his family recognizes truly who he is. When we look at our wives, we gotta look at her as the queen, the true queen that sits on that throne. And we all know what a woman is. See, a lot of times we say that man is the head, but don't forget, the woman is the neck. If you don't understand what I mean by the woman is the neck, meaning, see, your head only goes where the neck tells it to go. See, some people have too much pride to recognize that. Some of us, or men, have too much pride to recognize the woman's the neck, which tells the head which way to turn. If we listen to our women, if we stepped off that box, that soapbox of pride, of ego, that we would see that woman, and I mean a woman, that queen, will tell that head which direction to go and the right way to go. But see, we don't treat our women like queen, do we? We talk about how other people treat our black women. We talk about how the outside world treat our black women. We talk about how jobs treat our black women. We talk about how hospitals treat our black women. We talk about all the things and how our black women are missing and disappearing. But how are we treating our black women? Let's talk about it, people. We're still on the same subject. Let's talk about it. See, we treat our women like that prostitute that you bought. We treat that woman like you met at the bar for that one night stand. We treat our women like the woman we met on Tinder that we just met for one night stand. We treat our women like she's just somebody in the streets. Disrespect her. Not treat her like a queen. We treat her like a peasant. And then when she goes out into the world, we expect other people to treat her differently when we don't see her as a queen. When we believe in the hype that she's just one of these video girls. When we only see her as an object of sex. when we feel like she should be under our foot and not by our side, how do you figure the rest of the world's going to treat her? How do you feel the rest of the world is going to approach her? How are they going to greet her when they see her, when they're looking at how you see her and how we treat her? Don't believe the hype. Look at our young princes, young sons. We also want to talk about how we want to protect them, keep them safe in such difficult times where they seem to be hunted out in the streets. But then we have to look at where it starts. Where protection starts is in our own home. How do we treat our sons? What kind of things we speaking to our sons like? Constantly reminding them of the object of them being another statistic, another person in jail. Looking at other failed family members, friends who are falling victim to hard times, to the criminal injustice system. We look at other people who didn't do well, and we use them as a template to remind our children what's waiting for them. We speak down on our sons. So for sons sitting there playing video games or not so interested in the schoolwork and doing some of the schoolwork, we don't recognize that, see, it may be that they lack interest in the subject, but the fact of the matter is, the teaching style may not be catching their interest, may not be helpful to them to understand, because see, we have to understand everybody is different, so we all have different learning patterns. We have different ways, and trying to treat everybody in the same pattern, cut everybody in the same pattern is not the correct way. Hold on to that, because we're going to bring that back up again later in the show. Cutting people and trying to use the same mold for every single person. So the teaching habits don't happen. We claim our children have ADHD and we fill and pump them full of medicine because they have attention disorder, but the problem is they don't have attention disorder when they say I'm playing on video games though, right? They can stay focused when they're playing Fortnite. You wonder why? Because something in that game taps into their social consciousness to keep their attention. Something in that game they can relate to. Something in that game is keeping and grabbing their attention, while in school, something's not. But see, when they come home, though, then they have to deal with constant reminder, constant berating, because we only seen in our community, in the black community, in our people, going to jail, bums, homelessness, so we speak down on them. So we're not raising princes, we're raising peasants. We're not raising princes, we're raising peasants. When we look at our daughters, we look at the City Girls videos and we look at that, and what are we doing? What are we doing? It's funny when we have a family barbecue and get together and our daughters doing the latest dance and she know all the lyrics to the song. It's all cute, right? It's all fun and games when she know all the lyrics to the song. It's all cute when we do it. But once again, we believe in the hype. We think that's a cute thing. We think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. Notes keep itching, sorry. We think it's pretty when our daughters out here cussing and talking negative and talking down on people. We teach our daughter all the time, when a boy hits them, oh, it's the way of showing love. When a dude sits there and talk down on their looks and stuff, we talk them down. When our daughters sit here thinking that they're beautiful, we have to make sure that they know they're not too cute. Don't think you're too cute now. We got to say things to them to make sure that they don't get too big here, because we don't want them going out into the world thinking they're bigger or better than they actually are, do we? We don't want that. We don't need that. We don't need our daughters doing that. We don't need our daughters going out here thinking that they're more beautiful than they actually are. We tell our daughters things like this. Hide money from your husband because you gotta have a rainy day for him. Certain things like keep abuse and things separate from your family. We tell our daughters things to make them feel alone, feel isolated, feel like they can't communicate. What are we doing? Are we raising a princess or a future queen? Or are we raising a peasant? We gotta speak life into our children, because when we go out into the world, for all those asking me questions of how we protect our children from being the next victim, what we have to recognize is when our children go out in the world, we already know what's waiting for them. We already know what's waiting for our wives, our husbands. We know what's waiting for them. And when you already know the playbook and you already seen how this story ends, when you know how the movie ends, then you already have the advantage to go out here and change the ending of the story. You have the advantage to change how this game is going to play out, because see, I already know your playbook. I already know how this whole thing goes. Think about it. Let's go back to the main topic, the Ahmaud Aubrey case. We look at what's happening with him. Took over 2 months to even come up with criminal cases against the St. Michaels, father and son duel. We see that the St. Michaels have connections with the DA. We see how this whole thing where now it's coming up with a self-defense. And when you did the Trayvon Martin, we're going back to the past, the Trayvon Martin for a second, past to present. Trayvon Martin case, what was talked about in that case, early on in the case? Oh, it was a stand your ground law, it was self-defense. George Zimmerman gets off. We know how the situation plays out. And the first thing they talk about here is citizens arrest. And then I started to look up the Georgia law. Started to look up Georgia state law when it comes down to making a citizen's arrest. And the Georgia state law says that a citizen can make an arrest if they're in witness of a crime or suspicion of a crime has happened and they have suspicion that they have direct knowledge. Now understand this, direct knowledge of a crime being committed. So either you have to actually see the crime being committed or you got to have direct knowledge of the person committing the crime or a person is escaping from custody. Now let's look at the Ahmaud, what we know about the Ahmaud Aubrey story. Let's talk about what we know about it. We're going to go right back to how we save our children, but let's just speak on this for 1 second. What we know about the story. We know a young man was just out jogging, that he loved jogging, was an athlete in high school. That's what we know about it. We know he lived in a neighborhood. We know that by video surveillance and what people say that he stopped and looked in a house under construction. Okay, there's no crime committed there. A lot of times you are thinking about buying a car and the dealership is closed, you might stop by and look at the cars. You're not looking to steal a car, you're looking to buy it. Maybe you're just curious about things. A lot of times we stop and look at things. Sometimes we stop and we window shop and we look at a store and we might look at an outfit or a shirt or a jacket or a pair of sneakers in the window. It don't mean we have the intentions of coming to steal. It just means you're looking. So it's not a crime to sit there and look at something. Now you might want to say, okay, but it's trespassing, so why are you looking at a house under construction? We can look at that under multiple terms of what we can look at that under. Yeah, you can say that he was attempting to steal something, such as copper or a construction supply. You also can look at it and say, hey, he was a future buyer of that house. Maybe he was hoping that house come on sale. So you can look at that multiple different ways. So let's fact one. Let's go and move on to fact two. Gentleman's jogging. No crime was committed. No 911 call of him possibly breaking the house. No suspicion from 911 or any investigator of him ever robbing any houses. Man's jogging, somebody cuts him off, approaches him with a shotgun. What do you do if somebody approaches you with a gun? What would you do? Here's my question to you. All my audience out there, I don't care what race you are, what class you are, what would you do if somebody approached you with a gun? Somebody cuts you off in the street while you're jogging and brandish a gun for you. What are you going to do? Some of you say, I might run. Some of you may say, I might fight back. But see, that's the a common thing where you have the fight or flight mode. If you're not familiar with fight or flight mode, it's people who are under the arrest either do one of two things. They either stand and fight and stand their ground, or they take off running to defend themselves in the opposite way by taking off. Ahmaud Aubrey chose to fight back against a man brandishing his gun, and it ultimately led to him ending his life. Him losing his life. Excuse me, not him ending his life. Him losing his life. Way too young. His family members, his loved ones have to bury him. His mother lost a child who was out doing something that many of us do every single day. Just trying to stay in shape. Maybe trying to blow up a little steam. Just trying to exercise. Or just out for a daily run. Now, is that so bad? Is that illegal? Is that so wrong? Then we go back to our children. We talk about the template. Because I said we're going to go back to this, that mold we create for every single body. That mold. We talked about that when teaching our children, right? That mold we create. Go back to the birth of the nation, the movie. When we talk about how, see, people believe in the hype. When you see a black person doing something, or you see certain characteristics in a person doing something, you immediately assume that they're doing wrong. And we put Ahmaud in that mold that's been created. What do we know? Allegedly, there has been some burglaries in the neighborhood. You have a black man running down the street. Put two and two together, and a little bit of good weather, what do you come up with? We got our suspect. But this suspect will never see his day in court. This suspect will never be able to plead his innocence. The suspect will be murdered. Why? Because it fit in a mold that was created in your mind and your subconscious. So you took it upon yourself to play God, not only God, but police officer, judge, and jury, and executioner take this man's life. And then we got parents out here right now who are in deeper fear of how they protect their children. This is the world we live in, people. But as we look at the Ahmaud Aubrey case and we talk about how we as parents can keep our children, our family members safe. We talked about how treating your husbands like kings, your women like queens, your sons like princes and princesses. And you come back to me, you say, Alan the Great, what if we did all that? What if Ahmaud Aubrey's mom did all that? Because by all measurements and all things we know currently, she did all that. And her son still got killed in the streets. So what do you say then? What do you say then? How do we find justice? But when we do everything we're supposed to do as parents to protect our children, and our children still become victims, how do we find justice in this current world and in life we're living in? How do we find justice when it seems like the new norm where it's okay for not only our children to be gunned down, hunted down, and murdered in the streets, but there's no consequences for these actions? Some say we have to protest and go out here and march the streets and protest. Then you have the other side of people who will say then, I'm tired of protesting. Protesting doesn't do anything. It doesn't create anything. We're still having the same problems. We keep protesting and nothing happens. You have other people who are saying we should pray. We should get on our knees and pray to God. You have other people who don't believe in prayer, don't believe in God. We keep praying. That's all we keep doing. We keep being on our knees praying. We need to be like men and women and stand on our feet and not live on our knees. We don't need to be praying. We need to take matters in our own hands. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about it, people. Because I got to call us to the carpet on this. I got to call us to the carpet on this one right here. Let's get real. Let's get real. Let's get truthful on this one. So when we talk about protesting doesn't create anything, let's put it in context. You're right. Protest doesn't create anything if there is no structure to the protest, if there is no meaningful ending of the protest, if the protest dies down before we meet what we started the protest to be about. If we does it, like for instance, if we come up with, okay, the reason for this protesting is to not just get justice for Ahmaud Aubrey, but get justice for all black people who are still walking the streets, who are living, who are doing things that are legal, who are working and living in their legal rights and not doing anything wrong, but becoming victims of this heinous violence and death. If we're marching, we have to stand and say, we don't want just injustice just for Ahmaud Aubrey. We want justice for any black person or any person in general who's walking the streets and are unjustly murdered by whether it's police or private citizens. We have to first make a true stance and a true purpose of what are we marching for. Think about it. We're going back in history for a second. When Rosa Parks and the Civil Rights Movement started the bus boycott, what was their true purpose? They got tired of being forced to sit in back of the bus or standing when a white person got on the bus. So what did they do? They structured a sitting where we're not going to ride buses. And what did they do in the midst of those protests? They stuck together, meaning the people who couldn't or didn't have vehicles to make it to work, the people who did have these vehicles stuck together and made sure that people were still able to get to work and not needed or dependent on the transportation system. There was structure to this protest. There were people who had a purpose, but not only a purpose, they had structure to help people who were in need. And that's what helped that protest bring down the transit system. That's why right now when you get on a city bus, you can sit where you want and no one can tell you to get in the back of the bus or stand for a white person because there was structure so that protest actually worked. When we talk about Martin Luther King, the March on Selma, the March on Washington, all the marches he did. Look at the world you live in now. Look at the I Had a Dream speech. Look at what he was started with the Poor Man's March, which never got finished. Look at what he did. Look at where you live right now. And you telling me marching doesn't work? You telling me protesting doesn't work? It does work, but you gotta have a structure to your protest. You have to have a meaningful end to your protest, and do not stop until you reach the end. But see, what we do in the social media era is once it becomes not newsworthy or it don't show up in a news feed, then we lose interest in the protest, and we lose interest way too soon. So what happens is the crime that was committed to Ahmaud Aubrey, to Sandra Bland's, to Trayvon Martin's, to Mike Brown's, and to all these other people, what happens is it just goes away with no resolution. And it goes away until the next victim come along. So we're not protecting our children. We're leaving them out here to be murdered, to be killed. We say, why do we keep praying? What does praying do? Like, we keep praying for something and it never comes to fruition. Well, think about this. There's a saying with prayer. Prayer without works is dead. What does that mean? That means when you're sitting on your couch right now and, you know, a lot of us are, well, not a lot of us, but a lot of people are unemployed right now and can't make ends meet and or forcing some difficult times right now. Okay? But we're not going to talk about people who are in these times because these trying times right now are the reasons for it. But let's talk about in general times, okay? General times, you're sitting at home, you don't have a job, you're sitting there watching the daily shows, you know, Maury, Jerry Springer, trying to find out who's the father. You know, you sit down and you're getting tired, you're looking for a job. So you pray, Lord Jesus, please bless me with a new job. So what do? You get up and start applying for jobs? Or you just say that prayer and you just sit there and continue eating a bowl of cereal, watching Maury, and find out who's the father? Or watch Jerry Springer and find out who was cheating with who, mom or sister or brother or whatever the heck was going on with Jerry Springer. See, you sitting on that couch, you didn't even put an application in. You didn't put no phone call in and say, hey man, what's going on? Is your job hiring? You didn't pick up no newspaper, you didn't get online, nothing. You sitting there, you just said that prayer to God, asking him for a job, and you sitting there hoping that your phone will ring. Knowing that you never put an application in. That's prayer without works. A lot of people right now are praying for a husband or wife. Praying for one. Lord Jesus, please bless me with a good husband, a good wife. But then what are you doing? Sitting on your couch, sitting in a relationship that's not good for you. The dude has no intentions of committing to you, not in the way he should. Not committing to bettering your life, committed to bettering your situation. You already have children. He's not going to commit to your children. He's more concerned with you and him going out. He's not taking your children to Chuck E. Cheese or Dave and Buster's or nothing like that. He's not committed to your life. But you're praying for it. You got the men out here praying for a wife, but you in a relationship with a girl who's up there sleeping or running around or spend more time in the club or just interested in your money right now. Or you don't have anybody. You don't have anybody. Like when you're sitting here praying for a wife, Lord Jesus, please bless me with a wife, and you're sitting there right now, you ain't going on eHarmony or any dating site. You ain't walking to the supermarket. You ain't walking into church. You ain't walking around mall. Hell, you ain't walking around your neighborhood to meet a wife. You sitting on the couch hoping that your future wife or husband is going to knock on your door and say, hey, God sent me. I'm here for you. So that's faith without work. That's what we're doing when we're praying and we're sitting here talking about prayer doesn't work in the context of what's going on with the injustices that a lot of us are feeling. When we're losing our loved ones to being unjustly killed out on these streets, being gunned down without even being a date in court, any charges being filed, they're being murdered. And then we say prayer don't work, protest doesn't work. It does work if you actually put actions behind it because proof has shown that all these things work. The problem is that we have also shown that we're only interested at a certain point in time. And before we go, I got to speak on so many more things. I got to make this real quick because we have another issue. We have those who out here, and I'm going to speak on it. You can hate me for it. I don't care. But I got to speak on it because this is real. We got those who out here who want to be stars for 5 minutes. So they get into a traffic stop, routine traffic stop, they pop their camera on, what you should do. What you should do to protect yourself. But then you got those who try to provoke the police officers. You try to provoke them into a conflict. You try to provoke them into a conflict over something so simple as, oh, your tail light was already off or out, or you ran a red light. And then you try to provoke them into a conversation and you put it on Facebook Live and you're yelling and stuff and you're being very unnecessary and completing actions that are unwarranted. And you're doing all this for what? Most of y'all thinking, yeah, because if I get shot on camera, then yeah, I'll be the next person and my family will get rich and a big payday because I know I ain't have no gun or nothing, so yeah. But you're not thinking about it. You're going to put your family through a lot more hurt and pain because they'd rather have you than that money, first of all. And that 5 minutes of fame you're thinking about, think about all these people who died. See, when Trayvon Martin came, we was all putting on hoodies. But where are hoodies at now? Where's the silent protest now for Trayvon Martin? Sandra Bland died, there was protests. There was outrage. Mike Brown, there was protest, outrage. But see, the problem is, if it happens to you, in the current climate and the way we are sitting here dealing with this injustice is, we're putting you on a t-shirt. We're marching in your name on your behalf. And that same t-shirt is becoming a rag to wash and dry the car later. So you need to be careful about what you're trying to do for 5 minutes of fame and focus more on living You're being famous. Because there's a lot of other ways to be famous other than being shot by cops. There's a lot of other ways to generate money and wealth other than being shot by cops. And your family don't need that. Your community doesn't need that. So stop doing it. Another thing that's going to get brought up, I promise you, another thing's going to get brought up in the comment section, you watch, or somebody's going to say it to me is, well, what about black people killing black people? Because that's constantly the subject when we talk about these type of crimes and what happened to Ahmaud Aubrey. You constantly hear about, well, what about the black on black crimes? What about white on white crimes? What about Latino on Latino crimes? What about Asian on Asian crimes? Well, I can sit here and justify it saying to you people, well, you kill and you fight and you commit crimes against people who live in your same community. This is throughout history. This is not just a black thing. This is an Asian, a Caucasian. This is Italian, Irish. This is a Latino thing. This is a thing that happens in all communities, but the reality of the situation is there is some truth in it. I look at some of the social media beat that we do. I look at the lack of support for each other's companies and things. I look at this lack of support for the black community. I look at all the unnecessary killing, the low put on the low value put on our own lives, and there needs to be justice for that. We need to fight back against killing each other and fighting and destroying each other, tearing each other down. But we gotta stop. In order for that to happen, though, we gotta stop believing hype. Remember that old Public Enemy song? Public Enemy song? Don't believe the hype. Go back and listen to that song. You gotta stop believing the hype. You gotta stop hating you. And then you'll stop hating your brother. You'll stop hating your sister. You'll stop hating people that look like you. And it's not only for the black community, it's for everybody. When you stop hating you, then you can stop hating people that remind you of you. Then we can cut down on those crimes. And just because we're killing each other, we need justice for that. We do need justice for that. We need change for that. But that don't justify no police officer or no armed citizen to go out and hunt and kill our black men and women. And I'm just going to make that very clear. Yeah, we do need to do something about us killing us. And I do need to put out an episode on just that. And I will. But let's just stay on topic for a second. And let me just remind everybody who's out there who's going to try to bring up that, because this is how I'm going to answer that. We do have an issue with that. It does need to be addressed. It will be addressed. However, it does not give you or anybody else an excuse to run out and hunt and kill unarmed black people just because you're suspicious of them committing a crime. Because if that's the case we're going to play on, it's going to be a lot of dead people. Not because I'm asking for a war, not because I'm calling for a war, because it's going to be mayhem, because people are going to begin operating outside the boundaries of laws. And laws and rules are committed to keep order. So we all need to be respectful of that order. Because without order, we're no different than animals. We're no different than animals, people. So let's recap what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about treating your children like princes and princesses, not peasants. Treat your women like queens, not no thoughts or hoes or prostitutes. We're here to talk about treat your husbands like kings, not just that dude down the street or that, what you call them, sponsors. We're here to talk about Ahmaud Aubrey, and how he was unjust. He murdered unarmed black men out for a job, who was prosecuted, convicted, and executed for committing a crime that he didn't do. He never seen his day in court. Whose family members his mom must mourn the death of her son, who died too soon. We're here to remember all those who were killed way before their time, murdered before seeing their day in court, for being not given the opportunity to prove their innocence. We're here to talk about history and how it continues to repeat itself, and how we must do our part to change it. We want to talk about the what are their names? I don't remember the people's names who were right now. Mick Michaels, the people who are out here. Mick Michaels, who killed Ahmaud Aubrey. When we talk about their relationship with the DA, here's one last little tidbit. I let this thing go. I've been in those meetings. I've been in those meetings with government officials. I sat at the tables with politicians. You know one thing I've seen or didn't see? A lot of people that look like me. A lot of people that look like me. Look like you. A lot of people that represents me are you. So I want you to think about that when you think about protecting your children and keeping them safe. How you can protect them when you're not in a meeting, when you're not in a room where discussions are being had about their lives. It's time for you to take a stand, take a seat at the table. It's time for you to let your voice be heard, that you represent your people in the race that's being murdered, the people who are being murdered. Because if you're not at the table, then you only can wonder who is. I want to thank you for joining me for another episode of Past and Present Podcast. And before I go, people, I only got one thing left to say. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned. Peace.